The banquet hall smelled of roasted spice root and salted river fish. 200 guests sat at the long obsidian table, half of them Draxari nobles in jeweled war harnesses, half of them human diplomats in pressed white uniforms. Crystal goblets caught the soft amber light from floating lanterns. Somewhere in the corner, a quiet stringed instrument played a Draxari court melody, slow and deep. Queen Soraya sat at the head of the table. Her bronze scales were polished until they shone like old gold. A thin silver chain rested along her brow, marking her as matriarch of the Imperium. She was tall even when seated, her tail curled neatly behind her chair. She had not touched her food. She was watching the human governor across from her, listening as he spoke about shared trade lanes and protected travel routes. She did not like him, but she did not hate him either. That was a beginning. A servant in plain gray robes leaned close to her ear and whispered something. The queen's amber eyes did not change. Her hand, however, slowly set down the goblet she had been holding. The crystal made no sound against the table. The servant bowed and slipped away. Captain Vethrin, standing 2 steps behind her, saw the shift in her shoulders. He had served her for 30 years. He knew the meaning of that small movement. Something was wrong. The queen rose from her seat. The whole hall went quiet. Conversations died in mid-word. Even the music faltered. She gave a small nod to the human governor and said only that an urgent ship matter needed her attention. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She walked toward the side doors with the steady pace of someone who refused to run, no matter what the news. Vethrin followed her. So did 4 of her honor guard. Once the heavy doors closed behind them and they were alone in the side corridor, the queen stopped walking. She did not turn around. "Say it again," she said. The servant, who had been waiting, lowered to one knee. "My queen, the royal nursery aboard the Voronthal is empty. Prince Kilu is not in his chamber. The biolocks were opened from the inside. Guards searched the deck 3 times. He is not on level 1. Silence. A long, terrible silence. The queen finally turned around. Her face had not changed, but her tail had. The tip of it twitched once, a single sharp flick. Vethrin had seen that movement only twice before in his life. Both times, someone had died within the hour. "Lock the ship," the queen said. "Every door, every airlock, every vent. Bring him to me." Vethrin bowed and turned to give the orders. The honor guard scattered to their stations. The queen stood alone in the corridor for one breath, then walked back toward the banquet hall. She did not return to her seat. She moved past her own table without looking at it and stopped beside the human governor's chair. "Governor," she said, soft enough that only he could hear, "my son is missing. If any human hand has touched him, your world will not see another sunrise." The governor's face went pale. He stood up at once. He swore on his name, on his family, on every law his people held sacred, that no human knew anything of this. He offered the full search of his colony. He offered his own children as guarantee. The queen heard him out without speaking. Then she walked away. By the time her shuttle docked back aboard the flagship Voronthal, the news had already spread through the noble decks. War masters were gathering in the strategy chamber. Door scanners had been triggered. Halls were being searched section by section. The queen passed through it all without removing her ceremonial cloak. In the strategy chamber, Lord Ravak waited for her. He was older than most of the war masters, scarred across one eye, and he had never approved of this summit. He spoke before she even sat down. "The humans have taken him. There is no other answer. We must lock their colony. We must scan their cities. If they refuse, we burn the capital first." "You speak before you have searched," the queen said. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "Search every deck, every storage hold, every maintenance level. Find my son before you speak of burning anything." "My queen, with respect, the biolocks opened from inside. No human did that. But a human may have been waiting outside." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she walked to the great window of the chamber and looked down at the blue and green world of Helden Prime spinning slowly below. She could see the small lights of its cities from here. So many lights. So many sleeping families. She thought of her son, his small voice in the morning, the way he liked to chase the messenger lizards through the throne room, the way he laughed when she pretended to be too tired to catch him. Her hands tightened on the rail until the metal began to bend. "Bring me my war harness," she said. "I will walk human ground myself, and I will find him." Behind her, the War Masters bowed. Orders flew out across the fleet. 6 warships shifted into firing positions above Helden Prime. Targeting beams swept across the human capital. Down on the surface, sirens began to wail in cities that had done nothing wrong. And far below the polished royal decks, in a small humming workshop on the lower maintenance levels, a human engineer was quietly humming an old folk tune while a pair of bright amber eyes watched him from behind a service pipe. A drop of coolant fell from the open ceiling panel and landed on the back of Daniel Reyes's neck. He flinched and muttered something under his breath. He wiped it off with the corner of his sleeve, then went back to fitting the new relay into place. The relay clicked. A small green light blinked on. Daniel grinned to himself. "There you go, you stubborn piece of junk," he said softly, patting the panel like it was an old dog. He climbed down from the short ladder and stretched his back. His shoulder cracked. He was 34 years old and felt 50 most mornings. His coveralls were stained with 3 different colors of grease. His thermos sat on the corner of the workbench, half full of coffee that was almost cold by now. He did not mind cold coffee. He had drunk worse on worse jobs. The maintenance level hummed around him. Pipes carried hot fluid through the walls. Fans turned slowly in the high ceiling. The light was dim and yellow, the kind of light that engineers worked in across every species and every world. The Draxari called this part of the ship the lower belly. They almost never sent anyone here unless something broke. Daniel had been here for 6 hours. He had not seen another living soul the whole time. That was why he froze when he heard the small sound. It was not metal. It was not water. It was a soft scrape, like a claw pulled lightly across plating. Daniel turned his head slowly. He did not reach for any tool. He kept his hands open and visible. He had been told, very carefully before boarding this ship, that Draxari moved fast when surprised. A startled Draxari was a dangerous one. But what peeked around the service pipe was not a warrior. It was small, maybe waist-high. Its scales were the color of polished bronze, lighter than any adult Draxari Daniel had seen. Its eyes were huge and round, glowing faintly like little suns. Its little snout twitched. One small clawed hand gripped the edge of the pipe. Daniel did not move. He did not even breathe at first. The child watched him. Daniel watched back. "Hey there," Daniel finally said, his voice as soft as he could make it. "You lost, buddy?" The child did not answer. He just kept watching. His head tilted slightly to one side, the way a curious cat might tilt its head. Daniel slowly, very slowly, lowered himself down until he was sitting on the floor. He kept his hands on his knees. He did not smile too wide. He had read somewhere that bared teeth meant a challenge in Draxari culture. He kept his lips closed. "My name is Daniel," he said. "I'm just fixing a pipe. You hungry?" The child blinked. Then he took one small step out from behind the pipe. Daniel almost forgot how to breathe. He could see now that the child wore a soft inner robe of fine cloth, the kind no servant's son would ever own. The little harness across the child's chest was woven with thin silver thread. Daniel did not know much about Draxari rank, but he knew enough to know that silver thread was not something common children wore. He pushed that thought to the back of his head. He did not want to know. Not yet. If he thought about it too hard, he would panic. And a panicking human was the worst thing this child could meet right now. So Daniel just reached slowly for his lunch bag. He pulled out a small wrapped sandwich and tore it carefully into 2 halves. He held one half out. "Cheese and warm bread," he said. "Probably nothing like what you eat at home, but it's pretty good." The child crept closer. One small step, then another. He stopped just out of arm's reach. Daniel placed the half sandwich on the floor between them and pulled his hand back. The child watched the bread. He watched Daniel. Then he watched the bread again. Finally, with both small hands, the child picked it up. He sniffed it carefully. He took the tiniest bite. His eyes went wide. He took a bigger bite. He chewed slowly, the way a child eats something he has never tried before but already loves. Daniel laughed quietly. Right? Bread is the best invention in the galaxy. You can fight me on that. The child made a small chirping sound, almost like a giggle. Then he sat down right there on the floor, cross-legged, and finished the sandwich in 3 more bites. Daniel went back to his work. He did not stare. He just picked up his wrench and continued tightening the bolt above the relay, talking out loud while he did it. So this thing here, this is the coolant relay. It cools down the big engine room 10 decks up. If it breaks, the engineers up there get real hot and real angry. So I come down here and fix it before they start yelling. That's basically my whole job, fixing things before someone gets mad. The child listened. He climbed onto a crate beside the workbench to watch better. His little tail swung back and forth as Daniel worked. After a while, the child spoke. His voice was small and high, like a bell. Why do you sing? Daniel paused. He had not realized he had been humming again. Oh, that. My grandmother taught me. She used to say that singing makes hard work feel easier, like the song carries some of the weight for you. The child thought about this. Then he nodded slowly, very seriously, the way only a child can be serious. I like your song, he said. Daniel smiled and kept working. Glass shattered across the marble floor of the human embassy. A Draxari warrior had swept his armored arm across a side table, sending a vase of pale flowers crashing down. His tail flicked once, sharp and warning. The human secretary backed against the wall, her hands raised, her face white. Where is the prince? The warrior growled. His voice was the sound of stones grinding together. I don't know, she whispered. I swear on my children, I don't know. The warrior stared at her for a long moment. Then he moved past her without another word and continued down the corridor, his boots cracking the broken glass under his weight. Behind him, other warriors were opening every door in the building. Filing cabinets were dumped onto floors. Storage closets were pulled apart. 3 human guards had already been disarmed and bound in the lobby. They had not resisted. They had been told not to. Outside, in the wide plaza, Queen Soraya walked alone. Her war harness gleamed in the afternoon light. The harness was old, much older than her crown, passed down from her grandmother who had led the Draxari through the Lattice Wars. The metal had been polished that morning by a young attendant whose hands had not stopped shaking. The queen wore it now as if it weighed nothing. She did not look at the humans who pressed themselves against walls and doorways as she passed. She did not look at the children clutching their parents in fear. She walked with her eyes forward, her tail dragging small sparks across the stone behind her. Her honor guard kept their distance. They had learned long ago to never crowd her when she walked like this. She was not searching the buildings. Her warriors were doing that. She was simply walking through the city, letting the humans see her, letting them know that the matriarch of the Imperium herself was here. She believed in old methods. Fear, she had learned, often shook things loose that searches could not. But nothing was shaking loose. No one ran. No one confessed. No one begged for mercy in exchange for the prince's location. The human governor's office had given over every record, every guest list, every shuttle schedule. There was no plot. There was no kidnapping ring. There was nothing. She did not know what to do with that. High above, in the strategy chamber of the Voronthal, Lord Ravok paced like a caged predator. He had been waiting for almost 2 hours. 2 hours since the search had spread to the human capital. 2 hours of nothing. The other War Masters watched him quietly. They knew what was coming. He finally stopped pacing and turned to the communication panel. He opened a private channel to the Queen. My Queen, the first hour you gave them has passed. The second is almost gone. We must act. One strike on the human capital, not the center. The outer district. A warning, nothing more. They will produce the prince within the hour. There was a long pause. Then the queen's voice came through, quiet. And if they do not have him? Then they will know we are serious for the next world we visit. The queen did not answer for several seconds. Ravak held his breath. He thought, for one bright moment, that he had won her. "One more hour," she finally said. "Then we will speak again." The channel closed. Ravak slammed his fist against the panel. The metal dented under his claw. The other War Masters looked away. The queen stood in the middle of the plaza now. A small breeze moved across her scales. She looked up at the human sky. It was a soft blue, with a few white clouds drifting east. Her son had never seen a sky like that. He had been born aboard the flagship and had never set foot on a real world. He had asked her, only last week, what real clouds felt like. She had promised him he would touch one before the summit ended. She closed her eyes for one breath. The human governor, who had been standing at a respectful distance, finally dared to approach. He was an older man with silver hair and tired eyes. He had not slept since the alarm sounded. He stopped 6 steps from her and bowed low. "My queen," he said softly. "May I speak?" She did not turn. "Speak." "I have 3 grandchildren. The youngest is 4. If she went missing, I would tear apart any world to find her. I understand your pain. But I beg you to give my people more time. We are searching every street, every house. If your son is on my world, we will find him. I give you my word." She finally looked at him. His eyes were wet. He was not lying. She had seen many liars in her long life. This man was not one of them. "You have 1 more hour," she said. "Then I am no longer the one in charge of what happens next." The governor bowed again and stepped back. The queen turned and walked toward her waiting shuttle. Far below the polished royal decks, in the warm yellow light of the maintenance level, the little prince had fallen asleep. Daniel had folded his own jacket into a soft pad and set it on the workbench. The child had curled up on it the way a kitten curls into a sunbeam. His small tail was wrapped around one of Daniel's fingers. His breathing was slow and steady. Daniel sat on the floor beside the bench. He did not move. He did not dare wake him. He looked at the small, sleeping face and felt for the first time a deep, cold worry settle into his stomach. He knew. He had known for an hour. He had just been pretending not to. He whispered very softly, "Oh, kid, what did we do?" 3 pairs of armored boots descended the narrow service stairs in heavy rhythm. Each footfall rang against the steel grating. Captain Vethrin led them, his rifle held low across his chest. Behind him came 2 of his most trusted blademates, both veterans of the Outer Rim campaigns. None of them spoke. They had been sent to sweep the lower belly of the ship one final time. None of them believed they would find anything. Royals did not come down here. No one came down here. But the captain had run out of places to search. The maintenance corridor stretched ahead, lit by yellow safety lamps. Pipes ran along both walls, hissing faintly. A thin haze of warm steam drifted near the ceiling. The captain raised his hand. The patrol slowed. He had heard something. A voice. A soft human voice, speaking very quietly. Down in the workshop, Daniel was kneeling on the floor in front of the workbench. His hand rested gently on the sleeping child's small shoulder. He shook him once, very softly. "Hey, buddy. Wake up. Come on, little man. Time to wake up." The little prince opened his amber eyes slowly. He blinked. He yawned, showing 2 rows of small, sharp teeth. Then he saw Daniel's face and smiled sleepily. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi, kid," Daniel whispered back. His throat felt tight. "Listen, I need to tell you something important. Your mother, she is looking for you. She is looking very hard, and she is very, very worried." The little prince's smile faded. His ears flattened slightly. "I just wanted to see the engines." "I know, buddy, I know, but your mom doesn't know that. She thinks something bad happened to you. And when a mother thinks her child is gone, her heart breaks into 1,000 pieces. You don't want her heart to break, do you?" The child shook his head slowly. His eyes had gotten wet. Daniel had not known Drexari could cry. The small tears slipped down his bronze cheeks and pattered onto the folded jacket. "I am sorry," the child whispered. "It's okay. It's okay. We just need to get you back to her. That's all that matters." Daniel reached out, very carefully, and brushed one of the tears away with his thumb. The child did not flinch. He leaned into the touch like a tired puppy. That was the moment 3 armored Draxari warriors stepped around the corner of the workshop. Their rifles came up in one smooth motion. Daniel froze with his hand still on the child's cheek. The lead warrior, Captain Vethran himself, locked his targeting sight on the human's forehead. His claw tightened on the trigger. Daniel did not move. He did not even breathe. He kept his other hand open, fingers spread, palm up. He looked the captain in the eye. He did not look away. The room was silent except for the hiss of the pipes. Then the little prince slid off the workbench and stood up. His small feet made almost no sound on the floor. He walked forward, past Daniel, and stopped between the human and the 3 rifles. "Stop," he said. His small voice rang in the quiet room. "You will not hurt him." Captain Vethran did not lower his weapon. His eyes did not leave Daniel. "My prince, step away from the human. Slowly." "No." The captain's jaw tightened. "My prince, please." "I said no, Vethran." The little prince raised his chin. He looked in that moment very much like his mother. "I came here on my own. I opened the locks. The human did not take me. The human did not even know who I was at first. He gave me bread. He let me watch him work. He sang for me. He folded his coat so I could sleep. You will not hurt him. That is an order." The 2 warriors behind Vethran exchanged a glance. The captain did not move for a long moment. Then, very slowly, he lowered his rifle. The other 2 followed. Their weapons clicked into the safety position. Vethran lowered to one knee. "My prince, forgive me. We thought the worst. I know. I am sorry I scared everyone." The captain reached out his hand. The prince stepped into it and was lifted carefully into the strong armored arms. He looked small against Vethran's broad chest. He turned his head and looked back at Daniel, who was still kneeling, still frozen. "Captain," the prince said, "the human is my friend. Make sure no one hurts him." "Yes, my prince." Vethran turned his eyes to Daniel. The human had not moved. He had not spoken. He looked frankly like a man who had already accepted that this was the end of his life. The captain studied him for a long moment. "Human," Vethran said. "Stand up." Daniel rose slowly. His legs were not quite steady. He kept his hands visible. "What is your name?" "Daniel Reyes, maintenance engineer, 3rd tier civilian advisor." The captain nodded once. "Stay in this room. Do not leave. Do not touch the prince again. The queen will come." Daniel swallowed. "Yes, sir." Vethran activated his shoulder comm with a soft tap of his claw. He did not take his eyes off Daniel. "This is Vethran. The prince is found. He is safe. He is unharmed. He is with me on maintenance level 19. Stand down all search operations. Stand down all firing positions above the human capital. Now." There was a pause on the other end. Then a single response. "Confirmed. Standing down. The queen is coming." Vethran closed the channel. He looked at Daniel one more time. Then he turned and carried the prince out of the workshop. The 2 warriors followed. Daniel stood alone in the humming yellow light. His hands began to shake. He sat down very slowly on the workshop floor and put his head between his knees. Heavy doors hissed open one after another along the spine of the Voronthal. Each opening matched the rhythm of the queen's stride. She did not slow. She did not speak. She had heard only 6 words from Vethran's report before she was already moving. "He is safe. He is unharmed." Her honor guard struggled to keep up. The corridors of the lower decks were not built for her size or for her armor. She had to lower her head twice to pass through low-maintenance arches. She did not seem to notice. Her tail swept the floor behind her in a long, fast curve. Her amber eyes burned in the yellow light. Crews of engineers pressed themselves flat against the walls as she passed. Most of them had never seen the matriarch in person. They had certainly never seen her down here. None of them dared to look at her face. They only saw the gleam of her war harness flashing by and the great shadow of her tail moving past their boots. She turned the final corner. The maintenance workshop was just ahead. A small group had gathered outside it. Vethrin stood at the door. In his arms, the little prince was wrapped in a soft thermal cloak the captain had taken from one of his warriors. The prince saw his mother, and his small face broke into a smile, a tired and shy smile. The queen stopped walking. For one long moment, she did nothing. The matriarch of the Imperium stood absolutely still in the middle of an oily maintenance corridor, with grease on her boots and tears she would not let fall in her eyes. Then she dropped to her knees. The sound of her armor hitting the floor was loud in the quiet hall. Vethrin stepped forward and gently set the prince down. The child ran the last few steps and threw his small arms around his mother's neck. She wrapped him up against her chest, her tail curled around them both like a wall. She did not speak. She just held him. Her shoulders shook once, just once. The warriors lining the corridor turned their faces to the wall to give her this moment. Vethrin bowed his head. After what felt like a long time, the queen lifted her son so she could look at him. She checked him the way mothers in every species and on every world have always checked their children. She turned his small hands over. She looked at his feet. She brushed his soft scales with her thumb. Nothing was hurt. Nothing was broken. He was tired and a little sticky from bread, and that was all. "Where were you?" she whispered. "In the workshop," the prince said. "I wanted to see the engines. I opened the locks. I am sorry, mother." "You opened them yourself?" "Yes." She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, her voice was steady. "We will speak of this later. For now, I am only glad." She rose, carrying him, and stepped toward the open workshop door. Vethrin walked beside her. Inside, Daniel was still sitting on the floor where the captain had left him. He had not moved. His thermos was still on the bench. His tools were still spread out. When he saw the queen step through the doorway, he scrambled to his feet and immediately lowered to one knee. He kept his head down and his hands open on his thigh. He did not look at her face. He did not dare. The queen stopped just inside the workshop. She looked at the small folded jacket on the workbench, the half-eaten sandwich wrapper, the wrench placed carefully away from the edge where a child might have brushed against it. She looked at the floor where the human had clearly been sitting for hours, watching her son sleep so the boy would not wake up alone. She studied the human for a long moment. He was thin. He looked tired. His hair was streaked with gray. His coveralls were stained with old grease. He was nothing like the proud warriors who guarded her throne. He was small and soft and entirely without armor, and he had given her son bread, a song, and his own coat to sleep on. The little prince twisted in her arms and reached one small hand toward Daniel. He chirped softly, "Mother, this is Daniel. He sang for me. His coffee smelled like warm earth. He did not know I was the prince. He was kind anyway." The queen looked at her son. Then she looked at Daniel. "Engineer," she said. Daniel did not lift his head. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Look at me." He raised his eyes slowly. He had never seen her this close. Her amber eyes were the color of a sunset over deep water. The queen lowered her son carefully to the floor. She stepped forward until she stood directly in front of Daniel. Then she did something none of the warriors in the room had ever expected to see. She bent her head and pressed her brow lightly against Daniel's forehead. Vethrin inhaled sharply behind her. The other warriors froze. It was the brow touch, the gesture given only to one who had stood guard over a clanmate's child in battle. It was older than the throne itself. It was older than the Imperium. It was the oldest promise the Draxari knew. Daniel did not understand the meaning, but he understood that something important was happening. He stayed perfectly still. He did not pull back. The queen drew back slowly. Her eyes had softened. "You did not know who he was when you fed him," she said. It was not a question. "No, Your Majesty. He was just a kid." "And when you suspected?" "I was scared, Your Majesty. But he was still just a kid." The queen looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded once. Yes, she said. He was. High above Helden Prime, 6 warships slowly turned away from the planet. Their targeting beams went dark. Their gun ports closed one by one. On the surface, the sirens in the human capital fell silent. People stepped out of their basements and looked up at the sky. They did not know yet what had happened. They only knew that whatever black storm had been about to fall had passed them by. In the strategy chamber of the Voronthal, Lord Ravok stood at the window and watched the ships pull back. His scarred face was tight with anger. Behind him, the other War Masters had already returned to their stations, relief written across their faces. None of them shared his expression. None of them dared to. The doors opened. The Queen entered, the little prince walking at her side, his small, clawed hand wrapped around 2 of her larger fingers. Captain Vethran followed 2 steps behind. The court fell silent. Ravok stepped forward and bowed stiffly. My queen, the heir is returned. I rejoice. But the human who held him in his arms must still answer. The boy was in his possession. That alone is a crime under our oldest law. I demand the human be brought before the court and judged. The queen did not look at him at first. She walked to her throne and lifted her son onto the seat beside her. The prince sat down primly, his small tail curled around his feet, watching the court with serious eyes. Only then did the queen turn to Ravok. You demand? She said quietly. Ravok's jaw worked. I request, my queen. My son was not held. My son was hidden by himself. He opened the locks. He climbed down to the lower decks. He found a human stranger who did not know him. That human gave him food. That human folded his own coat so my son could sleep safely. That human kept him warm in a room full of sharp tools while the rest of us screamed for blood across the sky. She stepped down from the throne. She walked slowly around the great chamber. The War Masters parted before her. My son was found in the arms of a human who knew the risk of being found with him. Any one of you, in his place, would have run, would have hidden the child away in fear of being blamed. He did not. He stayed. He waited. He kept singing so the boy would not be afraid. She stopped in front of Ravok. You called the humans soft. You said they were unworthy. You begged me 2 hours ago to burn their capital city. If I had listened to you, my son's first friend would be Ash. The man who fed him would be Ash. The grandfather who has 3 grandchildren and tired eyes would be Ash. And we would have crossed a line that no Imperium has ever crossed and survived. Ravok's mouth opened. No sound came out. From this hour, the queen said, her voice rising so the whole chamber could hear, any Draxari who calls humans soft insults my son, my honor, and the truth itself. You will remember this, Lord Ravok. You will remember it every day for the rest of your service. She turned away from him. He did not speak again. The next morning, the summit resumed. The border dispute that had dragged on for 2 long years was settled in less than 3 hours. The queen offered concessions that no one had expected. The human governor, exhausted but steady, accepted them with quiet grace. New trade routes were drawn. Shared protection agreements were signed. The human delegation could hardly believe what they were carrying home. That afternoon, Daniel Reyes was summoned to the throne hall. He stood in clean coveralls. His hair was combed. His hands felt very empty without a wrench in them. He had been told what to do by an aide. He had been told what not to do. He had forgotten most of it the moment the great doors opened. The throne hall was enormous. Sunlight poured through high windows in long golden beams. The court stood on either side. At the far end of the long red carpet sat the queen. Beside her sat the little prince, his small feet not quite reaching the floor. The boy waved at Daniel with both hands. The queen did not stop him. Daniel walked the long carpet. He stopped at the foot of the throne. He lowered to one knee, the way the aide had shown him. The queen rose. She stepped down from the dais. In her hand she held a small object. She stopped in front of him and held it out. It was a polished bronze scale, set into a copper band. The scale was warm. It was one of her own. "Daniel Reyes," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. "By my hand and by my name, I name you Hearthfriend of the Imperium. Any Draxari who harms you answers to me. Any door of my people opens for you. Any table of my house has a place for you." She placed the band gently into his hand and closed his fingers around it. Daniel could not speak. He nodded. He bowed his head. The little prince could wait no longer. He slid off the throne and ran down the carpet on his small feet. He threw his arms around Daniel's leg and hugged it tight. "Will you teach me your grandmother's song?" he asked. Daniel laughed softly, even though his eyes were wet. "Anytime you want, kid." That evening, as the human delegation lifted off from Helden Prime, Queen Soraya stood on the bridge of the Voronthal and watched the small shuttle climb into the stars. She thought of how close she had come to ordering fire upon a world that had hidden nothing from her. She thought of how the smallest hands of her enemies had turned out to be the gentlest hands of her friends. She gave one quiet order. From that day forward, every Draxari child would be taught one human song before learning to hold a blade.